for me, and in my training as an anthropologist and working on Indigenous issues with Indigenous communities, the one of the I think the main issues currently, especially in Canada, is residential schools. And that kind of came into the consciousness, the general consciousness of the public, in I think it was 2015, when the Truth and Reconciliation Commission launched its final report. Of course, I mean, this is something that's been going on since 1800s, right? So it's been going on for a long time. But only recently in the memory of Canadians, and your average, like, Euro Canadian, starting to really think about it. The Royal Commission on Aboriginal Peoples in 1996 did a lot of work on residential schools, and there's volumes of material on the issue that came out, what, like 20 years previous to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. So I think that issue is a particular concern for Canadians, and recently with the discovery of the missing children in the schools, the grave sites, that's also brought it up to another level. So I would say that to me, that is probably the number one issue happening right now, for sure. And within that, of course, you have a growing awareness of colonialism, the impacts of colonialism, the impacts of aggressive policies of civilization. We see the toppling of historical European statues all across the country, and that conversation about what does that mean? Who are these people? There's a lot of anger brewing, and a lot of questions, I think, too. Amongst the Euro Canadian population, but also there's a lot of issues coming up in Indigenous communities as well around these questions. So yeah, it's a big one. Yeah. Yeah, how do we commemorate controversial issues? That's a really that's a challenging question, because I don't think there's no single standardized way to do that. If we look at the issue of residential schools in Canada, as an example, I think for me the answer lies in working together with communities, people, survivors, families of survivors, a careful, conscious uh, commemoration that is respectful and that is participatory and collaborative, and nuanced, because in the case of residential schools, these schools are all across the country, and there's no, each community is going to have a particular response to that particular issue. So we need to respect the nuances of what that means, and the time that it takes to get to that relationship, to build that commemoration, because this isn't something that you can do in a funding year envelope, like, we have money in this fiscal year, we need to spend it, let's do a commemorative plaque, or get some people together. I don't think that's the way to go about things. If there's funding being put towards these sorts of commemorative events and things, it needs to be an open funding envelope that that doesn't have an expiry date to it. Yeah, so it's complex, and understanding the complexity, and really embracing the complexity, to me, is the way to do this. Politicians are looking for votes, right? And more and more we have this populist type of governance model, and leaders who are all about the selfies and the social media and the little Twitter sound bites and these sorts of things. And so unfortunately, commemoration can become a virtue signaling event, and that lacks the depth, that lacks the heart, that lacks that connection. And so it gets wrapped up in the politics, where a politician might be saying one thing, well, working with a controversial event and promising to do something, just to get votes, or just to look good on social media, because that's what's trending and they need to get something out there. And I mean, like, the pink elephant in the room in Canada is, our prime minister, on the first national Remembrance Day for residential schools, instead of meeting with communities, go surfing on the West Coast here in British Columbia. And, I mean, that to me is incredibly disrespectful, and to me, that's the politics, right? And then just kind of shakes it off, and doesn't have any accountability. And so, what does it mean to that politician who created the event, who's on social media, who that then doesn't actually get involved at all, and goes and has a recreational time on the beach, right? Um, I mean, that's one example, a current example, right? That's incredibly troubling to me. And in terms of the politics, because we're talking about lived experiences, generations of lived experiences, with these historical events. In the case of residential school, the trauma, the intergenerational trauma, the communities, the kids that have died, the kids never returned home. And this is, it's not something that can become a Twitter soundbite. So I think that politicians need to um, uh, um, have bring more heart into it. Maybe they need to spend some time in Indigenous studies classes, learning about this stuff, actually learning about it. Talking to people on the ground, meeting with survivors, meeting with people who are uh, people who family members, kids growing up, the intergenerations of survivors. Talking about these issues, like actually getting, like, building a little bit of knowledge base, to then build policy and create good things from it. Yeah. Yeah, that is really a crucial question. I've taught graduate classes where I've had three generations of residential school survivors in my classroom, and um, I mean, what a powerful learning opportunity, not just for the students, but for me as well, as a Euro Canadian, as somebody who wants to learn about these issues, to commemorate them in the best way possible. Holding the space as a facilitator, as an educator, we're facilitators, right? We hold spaces for people to come and be vulnerable and share their ideas, and learn from each other. So, um, you know, education does provide a space for that. It has to be done in a way that is mindful, though, to um, letting people tell their stories. And it's hard listening to some of those stories. So in the classroom, we're commemorating those memories as we're listening to them, as we're holding the space, as we're supporting each other through the learning process. There's a commemoration that happens through education, through learning about issues, through giving the space to people to share um, their memories, and for other students to learn from those sharing experiences. So it's a powerful, um, it's a powerful avenue for commemoration, education. You know, I mean, I think that most people think of commemoration as, you know, the big events like, you know, a Remembrance Day, or going to a museum like the Holocaust Museum or things like that. But you know, through education, we can, you know, we're doing this commemorative work, um, constantly, and yeah, it's powerful and it's tough. It's really tough to hold the space sometimes, when people are incredibly emotional, or working through trauma, and sometimes you have, differences of opinions, right? And you have an opportunity to bring people together, to learn from each other, and hopefully, you can somehow whittle those differences of opinions down. But if you can't, at least you can come out where people can agree to disagree in a respectful way. And I think that's, you know, holding that space is so important.